Hello and welcome to Reflection 2, House is a Feeling. My name is Man Paris, your guide and honest host. We will begin with the illegal fight for the right to dance, Part 1. Open your mind as we take you back to the mid-80s. Coventry, the Europe's motor city, with its own Motown story, but in electronic music. DJ Michael Wilson reflects.
As a child, I suppose the world was a smaller place. You know, you didn't travel as a child. You didn't. Obviously, kids on a plane now, and they're all going over to amazing places in the world. Short trip over to Spain, long haul trips and stuff like that. To me, an adventure was jumping on a bus and going from the beginning of a journey to the end of a journey to find out where it went. And that was like my first idea of adventure. And then also just walking around the streets and just seeing where the different areas are. Because as the world's expanded now and it's easy to go across to Spain, go across into Europe, I suppose in the 70s for me, families in the 70s, correct me if I'm wrong, just getting outside the city and going to other cities and other parts of England was a big deal. So walking from my street and my area to explore another street in another area was quite fascinating. Coventry's always been quite multicultural.
Jeffrey Man Paris shares his memories. My parents, they are from Barbados, and they came over in the 60s when the UK was advertising for lorry drivers and nurses, and that is where my mum and dad came in, because my mum was a nurse and my dad was a lorry driver. So they came over and they were housed in Wood End. That's where they put all the immigrants, really, Irish, you name it, they were put there. It was pretty easy them days to kind of get into the wrong crowd and get into trouble. And what I found was, it's quite funny, but what I found was that I was always getting caught. And it was because I'd be the only black guy with them. I'd be the only black kid. They would just say, oh yeah, it was some white boys and the black boy, and they'd know exactly who it was. So I had to really think about what I was doing from early, you know, that I couldn't do what these bad boys are doing. David Bam Bam Linus honestly tells us.
Well, I was brought up in the Henley Green area of Coventry, which was quite a run-down area, really. There was, I suppose at that time of my life, it was more Irish families. It was my parents, well, not so much my mum, but my dad and all his friends. They were all people that come over from Ireland, places like that. They were having problems with the IRA over there, and they come here for work. My father and everyone's parents, I suppose, in them days were pretty strict. But the Irish seemed to be. It was the Irish and the Scotch that actually come to Coventry for building work. So our upbringing, although they were workers, they used to spend their money on drink. It weren't about giving the kids a better life. It was about earning more money so they could go to the pub, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that was my dad, sort of thing.
Kieran Fred Fivey lovingly remembers.
Our life was built around, you know, mother and father working and us off to the local Catholic school, which was St Elizabeth's. Sundays was church day, so you'd all be Sunday best on, but we'd nip into church, cross ourselves, and then we'd nip round the back of the club and go on the snooker tables, me and my brothers. We grew up to a life of boxing, because in the Edgewick Club was a boxing gym. And we were little Irish fellas living in England.
Neville Fivey describes.
Well, what it was, I was 16, Kieran was 15, Ray was a little bit older. My mum and stepfather were moving back to Northern Ireland. They wanted us to go and we didn't want to go. So we got a flat in Wood End. We had nothing, like, you know, we had a holy settee. We sort of struggled through that, like, you know, we used to go out in the mornings, Sunday mornings, rob the chickens and the milk off the doorsteps. That's how we survived really in them days.
Mum and Dad, you know, they were musical. They had a record player and they used to buy 7-inch records and the odd album when they could afford it. And, you know, I remember the songs because my mum used to always play them when she was doing the ironing and I would see how happy the music would make her. I just used to use them for skimming because they were great skimmers. And then my mum just pulled me up and says, why don't you just play some records, like, you know? And I thought, yeah, all right, then I will. And this is how I believe I started into DJing. I used to get a few bottles of Mans and get the music on. And we as kids used to watch them dance and that, and it used to be great.
I remember playing the violin. I flipping hated that thing. And leaving it at the top of the street and stuff, and every time I left it somewhere we'd be knocking on the door and one of the neighbours was like, I think your son's left his violin or something. I was like, how does it keep coming back? It's like a boomerang, a thing, you just couldn't get rid of it. And everyone's playing guitars and stuff and I like to play violin. Oh god. Well, at the time I thought it was the most uncoolest instrument to play, so I was playing piano and violin and I wanted to play guitar and synths. So yeah. But no, it was a good introduction to music.
I lived in another pub, the Red House pub, Stony Stanton Road. That was a large reggae sort of, I remember Baggies Blues. I remember getting into feeling the reggae, used to like the Bob Marley, the Gregory Isaacs, all stuff like that. I'd be working there and then we'd be that sort of brought me into music sort of scene, enjoying that. And then along the Coventry Revolution come along then the ska. Skinheads and ska and stuff like that, sort of out and about Coventry, going to gigs, Madness, The Specials, Selector, all in the early 80s then.
When we were listening to the Coventry group, The Specials, they were saying things in their songs, but stuff we wanted to hear. They were telling us about, you know, the big monkey man, the doorman, like, you know, and stuff like that, and you know, racism and stuff like that. So I think that the Specials laid the foundation to what needed to happen because they were actually saying Coventry is a ghost town. And Coventry was a musical town. Big stars come from Coventry. Coventry's always been musical and it was losing that.
You only had 3 TV channels and I think we only went on till 10 or 11 or something like that, 12 if you're lucky. So music was always around, so if you weren't watching TV or there wasn't anything decent because you didn't have much choice, you'd put on music, so music would fill that void. So, you know, the radio would fill the void as well.
And then I was an amateur boxer in Bell Green. And I think I got to about 19, 20 and, you know, I was fighting for trophies as an amateur and I thought, you know what, I might as well turn pro and fight for money. You know, like I was only getting £150, £200 a fight. You know, I was on the Errol Christie show at the Sports Centre and boxing helped me out in life, to be fair. Like,
I remember my mum buying me my first set of Technics. I think it could have been 14. Can't remember. But once again, she did that in order. So the idea was to keep you off the streets, but it turned out worse because then you're being on the streets every night because you're out in the dodgy venues and parties because you wanted to play. You know, buying that equipment then was expensive. It's expensive now, and it was expensive then.
Maggie Thatcher, she weren't looking after us sort of people, we were the poor, so, well, we had to fend for ourselves in the end.
There was a bit of a recession going on with Maggie Thatcher and her changing the whole format of people's livelihoods, which was closing all the collieries and stuff like that. All I was doing at the time was I was on a course, a yacht course. It was a government course where you got £23.50 a week for working in a factory for a bit of experience, but it was slave trade. You know, that's what I seen it as. They were getting all their dirty bits of work done by me, so I opted out of that.
You know, I think we were quite happy for them to go out, get ratted and wrecked on a Friday, Saturday night, drunk in these sort of drinking holes and these dodgy little ritzy nightclubs, have a fisticuffs, then on Monday go back to work, go back to the factories, and it all starts again.
Jack Brown remembers.
Coventry in that period was a violent place. As I imagine most places were, but Coventry particularly.
There was a time when I was just getting into a lot of fights all the time. People wanted to beat me up or vice versa through the drink and all that lot.
Yeah, it was very apparent that tribalism and territorialism, and you know, it was passed down from fathers to sons. Also down to the school thing, depending on what area the school was in.
And it was a war zone well before you had the Crips and the what going on, mate. You know what I mean? You had Belgreen, Wood End, they hated Canley, Tyler hated bloody, you know, you had Bedford and Eton, everyone was at it, you know, because that was the fun, that was it, that was the norm. Fights on a Friday, if you were black, you wouldn't go into Covetown on a Friday.
85, 86, 87, Coventry was gripped in a bit of racial war, if the truth be known, wasn't it? There was a bit of skinheads, there was a bit of scar, there was sort of a few, you know, we were like just young lads growing up, not much hope to be out there, you know, we didn't know, there was no direction in them days telling you, you know, what you're going to do for a living, what your aspirations were.
Lisa Linus looks back.
Every Saturday there'd be a fight. I got arrested a few nights and things like that. It was fighting from every single angle, police were everywhere.
Roger Germain looks back.
You had no-go areas, you know. Depending on where you were from and what you looked like, you couldn't go to certain areas in the city without getting hassled. So everybody was fighting against everybody.
Go to your ritzy nightclub and dress up. You have to wear a shirt and a tie. You have to wear a tie. Shoes and ties to go out. Bloody hell. You know, walk up in trainers and jogging pants and you're not getting in. There's no way.
When you were going into town, you had to put your shoes on and whatever and dress right up to the nines and that, and it would be like, really, just to get all sweaty and that and come out, you know, hammered, it just doesn't seem worth it.
You dress up in a suit, like, and you'd go to a club, like, because they wouldn't let you in with fucking jeans. They wouldn't let you in with, you wouldn't think about going to jeans and a t-shirt. They wouldn't let you in, so you'd dress up, like, you know what I mean?
You know, and the music at the time was shit. It was just a real bleak, you know, period in this country's like history. It was real dark.
It kicked off a few times, so you know, we were more or less barred, like, for a lot of the clubs back in the day. Like, that was the culture, really. Going out, getting pissed, having the row at the end of the night.
Talking about us, telling lies, is that a surprise?
And then when the football come along, everybody was behind Cov City, no matter what area you were from. So you were all from Cov then. But then you're fighting against people from Birmingham, like Villa and Birmingham, Leicester, Derby, the regional teams, really.
Then the football scene came about, Coventry City, a love of my life. Joined up with all the local lads, a team of guys that were called the Gosford Mob. They then became sort of amalgamated into the Legion.
You just wanted to belong. That's what it was. You'd want to be with a group. You'd want to have something to almost brag about. Then all of a sudden you'd see another element and it seemed kind of, you know, I wouldn't mind a bit of that. And it was the hooligan side of stuff. Nothing I was proud of, but it happened. It just seemed to be, you just seemed to be swept into it. And you just try and, even though it wasn't normal, you'd try and normalise it in your head.
Simon Harris looks back with no filter.
If we was playing Cov on a Saturday, we would come to Coventry early. We'd come in either cars or vans, try and mingle in with you. You had a pub outside the ground. Matters that pub, I can't remember the name of the pub, but you had a pub outside the ground where we tried to get in and take over. But only sometimes, only about 20 of us would get in because we would get sussed and you know, Bill chases off if it was in there. Then we'd get chased down the hill, about 600 lads used to chase us. So yeah, Coventry was one of the ones where you had to be on your toes. If you weren't, you was getting it.
You know, we were part of a football violence sort of thing, like, you know, we'd go to Leicester, Birmingham, away games, you know, that's what it was like, you know, football violence was sort of part of the culture in them days.
I think for us, it was Coventry, Nottingham, Derby, they was our locals. They was like, you was getting it. If you was going to them games there, you was definitely getting it. The biggest mindset we had was the Zulus from Birmingham. They was the cream of the crop basically, because they had numbers. More numbers than anyone else. But we used to go to their ground or get off the train and they was waiting for us and have the row with them. It was like we was programmed to do it, weren't we? It was like something what we looked forward to on the weekend, to get down the football, to smash the away team, show them that they've come to our city, they're going to get smashed. Like if we go to their city, we're going to get smashed. It's just the norm, but then everything changes, isn't it?
Here you go, way too fast. Don't slow down, you're gonna crash. You should watch your step. Don't look out, gonna break your neck. So shut your mouth. 'Cause I'm not listening anyhow. I had enough of you. Enough to last a lifetime through. So what do you want of me? Got no words of sympathy. And if I go around with you, you know that I'll get messed up too with you.
I got my stuff together, got somebody to make some speakers for me, and they were wicked. I had a bass bin, a mid-range and tweeters, and I would put them in my van, my old Ford Transit, white, rusty, and take it up to Colin Campbell, all my equipment, take it upstairs, set up, and believe me, this stuff was heavy. And then the records, you know, if you wanted to please everybody, you needed a lot of records, and they weren't bloody light. And I used to set up, it used to take me about an hour to set up. The place would be rammed, and what I found was like, they wanted the more acidy tracks, because I had about 4 acid tracks. I think it was one by Adonis and a couple of others, and that was called, you know, you just bought anything which said acid on the front, and that's what I did. And I played them, and the crowd were loving it, and I was getting a following for mostly them tunes. That I was playing the B-sides as well. But anything, you know, which was like psychedelic-y, went down well. That's how I got my first kind of feeling of what they wanted out there, and if I wanted to carry on doing it. And I did. Because my mixing was a bit ropey, I didn't know what I was doing them days, so I didn't know you had to mix. I would, you know, some DJs would talk through the middle of it, right, you know, or in between. I would rap. I'd just come out with a rap. and that would cover my mitts in, and they loved it. That's how I was born, really. Neville got the door on Talio and got me in there. That was one of the starting grids for me. Talio, good old Talio. The boys were on the door, Neville and his crew used to run the door. It was, I'd say, the number 2 rave pub that got introduced to Coventry, because the first one was definitely the 3 Tons.
We were going to the blues and sneaking in and stuff like that, and they were amazing parties. They were like the after hours of the day. You know, you come out of a pub at 11. I think 11 was... people just go into pubs at 11 now. In those days, at 11 o'clock was the last orders type thing. And someone to have his a blues party on. And they would go on from 11 onwards to maybe 2, 3, 4 in the morning, depending on if there's any complaints or shut down. So they were like the after parties. So you're going to these parties and hearing some pretty good music. And then from the blues, it said you also had sort of like the dance ravey, pre-rave, but the dance sort of underground parties where you go and same mentalities, you know, kicked out of a pub, but you go to probably some sort of illegal setting, dodgy flats, and you just, you know, just been able to hear this music.
Amanda Tully remembers.
I went to a few illegal parties up in people's sort of derelict flats in Hillfield, boarded windows but painted flowers and stuff on, so it's a bit of house music, but I'm quite into my reggae. I like a lot of reggae.
Rave music them days, you know, weren't what you call rave music now. It was, you know, soul to soul was rave. We weren't too fussy them days, like, so yeah, there probably was a bit of soul in there and all sorts, you know, because I was, that was the kind of DJ I was. And then I was introducing this acid music and stuff, what was coming out. You know, you get the picture. So it was like tunes which were chilled all the way up to 140 beats. French Kiss by, I think, Lil Louis. That was one of the first ones I had, which was... that was a pure rave record. That was like techno. Thank God for them, really, because it was them that made me buy more rave tracks.
Into late 87, 88, met a fella, Robbie Lyons, real good friend of mine. He'd been over to Ibiza.
But me and Kieran were in, like I said, Shambles Arcade. We were having a breakfast in there, and a lad called Robbie Lyons, he turned up and he went, "Oh God, you want to get onto this thing? There's a thing happening in Ibiza at the minute. It's all about rave music and this, that and the other, and everyone's taking ecstasy, and he said it's absolutely brilliant." And we were like, "Yeah, you're taking drugs?" Because we didn't take drugs and stuff like that. But when he explained it, it seemed like it was pretty cool to do it.
Somebody sort of said, "Here, do you want half of one of these?" So, you know, nothing, you know, what's the word? You're going to try something, well, tried it, and boom.
We were the doorman and we stood there off our tits, actually being security. So, or other security, you can't stand there like that. We didn't know what had happened to us, what had overtook our bodies. It was unbelievable. We were bouncing around, I think it was to Luther Vandrossen, whatever music was playing in the Talio at the time. It was early, funky Earth, Wind and Fire, you know, it was like a Sharon and Tracy nightclub. We're the doorman and we stood there off our tits.
I don't want nobody else to ever love me. You are my shining star, my guiding light, my love fantasy. There's not a minute, hour, day or night that I don't love you. You're at the top of my list, cause I'm always thinking of you. I still remember in the days when I was scared to touch you, how I spent my day dreaming, planning how to say I love you. You must have known that I had feelings up your heart and you told me to come and oh my love. 1,000 kisses from you is never too much. I just don't wanna stop. Oh my love. A million days in your arms is never too much. I just don't wanna stop. Too much, never too much, never too much, never too much.
We were starting to get a lot of the electronic sounds coming in, but you know the DJs around town were playing such cheese, no one could get off on it, and this is when drugs started to come on the scene.
It was like a bulb moment going off in my life. Half an ecstasy, it was like the best thing I'd ever had. I weren't into drugs, you know, had a puff on a bit of weed, stuff like that, nothing serious. Took this ecstasy, boom, life changer.
Because I weren't really into the music at the start, couldn't understand it, thought it was bland, boring, repetitive, until a certain football fan made me take ecstasy, and that's when I started to understand the music more, and like, wow, right, gotcha.
Everybody sort of dropped their barriers and dropped the hardness and the you know, I want to be seen to be hard and, you know, hard exterior, and some of these lads that, you know, you'd look up before think, fucking hell, I wouldn't like to mess with him, were now giving you a hug and stuff like that, and everybody was, you know, you were sort of getting on.
I started working at the Talio, and that's sort of where the music started to come in there. Shane Brown playing the, you know, all the housey type music, and it just sort of went, it changed. Everybody started getting on, and I'd look sometimes and think, oh my God, look at who Bam's talking to. You know, all the different areas, they all just became friends.
We started recording the nights, recording the nights, or certain DJs and that, and then we'd copy the tapes, and then we'd give them to people just for listening to and stuff like that.
It went off everywhere, you know. Then it was, you know, over to the Reflections nightclub across from the Talio, and the music just gripped audio. It was a dance music revolution sort of thing, and then it was, you know, you're talking like Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. Just we couldn't get enough of it, you know, young lads, and then it just exploded.
And people that normally didn't like each other actually started to like each other. You know, like, you know, enemies from before, it was like, you know what, mate, you're sound you are. I didn't mean to say about you, you know, I thought you were a right wanker sort of thing, and it brought people together, the music, and it was the ecstasy at the time, like the drugs and that, you know, which helped towards it. It was a lot of love.
All of a sudden this raving scene come along and everybody just stopped the fighting, and it changed to where people would want to punch each other's head into people wanting to hug each other, these same people. And, you know, they were proper off their head. Everybody was, you know, just off their head and just didn't like anyone else. But when the raves come in, all that changed. It went 180, just flipped.
At the time, we were working at a nightclub in Coventry as well, called the Talio. So we had meeting places, what people could come to and listen to a bit of music there. And like I says, then we put together this little party thing. We had this Robbie helping us. He says, you've got to advertise it, you've got to get a flyer done. So we just writ down on a piece of paper that we were going to do this party.
And they'd written these little flyers out, handwritten flyers out, and that was the start.
We got hold of a fellow who owned the car, shift all these cars up. We're going to put a dance event on. So,
yeah, we went to this Canal Road, spoke to the bloke. I think Kieran might have given him £100 or something like that. And we says, right, we'll start getting this flyer printed up. We photocopied it. It took about 200, 300, I think we did about 300 photocopies of this little piece of paper that we wrote out, and then just passed it out to people that we knew.
So we put a little flyer out, we designed it. What we're going to call it first. What's that club you've been to in Ibiza, Robbie? It's Amnesia. Is that where they play all the music? Yeah, right. Right, we all love house music. Yeah, house music.
He said they're doing this big nightclub called Amnesia. We're going, well, what are we going to call ours then? He goes, call yours Amnesia as well, because everyone will think it's come from Spain. And that's what we do. So we sort of stole their name, but we called it Amnesia House instead of just Amnesia.
A lot of people have asked that question. Where did the name come from? That's the name, and that's the history of it. Let's call it Amnesia House.
Happened about 3 months after we had discussions, and we had Jeff playing music in the Talio, and people sort of got up on the rave scene pretty quick. Do you know what I mean? And what people dressed, all little Indian caps and with mirrors on and tie-dye tops, dungarees, all that sort of stuff. And we just went from there. We got some rastas from Hillfields that come and brought a sound system for us. We ended up with Jeff Paris playing there and a couple of other DJs.
I'd just come out of prison, something I'm not proud of. I was in for football violence. I got arrested for chinning basically an Aston Villa fan, sorry Villa. And they said, Nev, do you want to do the door? So I've gone, yeah, I'll do the door. I actually had a brubby tash when I came out of prison. I looked a right twat. And they were organising this party down Canal Road. I think the flyer was a piece of paper. I think Kieran had drawn it out with a smiley face or something like that.
There was no telephones in them days. There was no WhatsApp, no Wi-Fi, none of that. It was word of mouth. Right, where's it happening? What's happening? Where is it? Jeffrey Man Paris and Shane Brown, they were the DJs up at the Talio. Jeff went to Baggy. He was the sound engineer. Can we get a sound system down there? Can we get all the bits down? And we had a strobe. We just painted all the walls with aerosol cans. A few backdrops up there, smiley faces. This is an acid house party.
The black community were putting on these had some amazing speaker systems. When the guys like Amnesia were putting on the raves, originally they were going to the Jamaican crew in Hillfields to get the speakers. They put the speakers on what was a blues party. They started putting in the sound systems to become these raves. Yeah, it's quite interesting how that developed, and when you had these two cultures that at one stage were separated, they came together because for the goal of a common theme, they needed each other.
And that kind of how it linked, sort of the cultural links with a lot of the guys who were, the Caribbean sort of aspect from the country, from Coventry, linked in together. Everybody, it was like an egg that all come together. Before the shell was all cracked, when ecstasy come about and the dance music, it welded everything together, so to speak.
I was booked because I had the equipment for our illegal rave at Canal Road. I was booked for my equipment and also my tunes and me. You got the full package with me.
So my first ever memories of it was Bam coming home and he'd got me a pair of dungarees, denim dungarees, and he's like, this is what you're wearing tonight. And we went to Canal Road in Fossil, and I said, what on earth's going on? And it was him and Kieran. That went on and on. People were turning up, like Nev actually turned up in his suit jacket from Park Lane, and it was mad. There was a few of us there as ravers, and then there was like people just turning up in their town clothes. And that was my first ever, and then it just went from there then, really.
But yeah, the Canal Road, there was probably 200 people turned up at that, the first one. Everyone was in dungarees and tie-dye tops, and
part of the buzz was was grabbing the next. It wasn't like drug dealing at the time, like you'd call it now. It was lads all, like the 60s, popping a bit of pills, quadrophenia, you know, sort of that. 20 years on, this is what maybe your parents done at that time, and this is what we were doing. And it was down to London. We went down there. It was very heavy in the gay scene, obviously. Heaven, that was one of the big gay clubs in London. And we met two fellas down in Nicky, who was a friend of a friend from IB. It was always a friend of a friend. And we got ourselves 100 ecstasy. So then we brought them back to Coventry, and that was that's what made the night.
DJ Dobbo describes.
That's right, it was just a car auction warehouse, empty. Went there, smiley faces everywhere, you know, because it was the acid man. No, that. So yeah, and that's what it was. It was flashing lights. Jeff was on the DJing, and all that. And me, Jeff, and it was like, I don't know, 5 of them. And it was, and that's when it was all. That's when it began for us anyway. You know, like in Coventry, like that was the first one.
It was a movement, you know, all these young people coming together to try and define something that they could say is their own instead of being told what to do.
I think we just treated it as a bit of fun. It weren't a serious thing at the start. It was just like somebody throwing a party, you know.
It was a strange thing, Canal Road, but it was a big and powerful thing because it brought all of us together, and we all trusted each other after this. We all knew our place. It was strange, you know. So, you know, there probably still wasn't a lot of love from a lot of the crew towards me because of my colour, all right? But the music and the rave scene overcome that, and I got respected for what I was doing. It was really strange for me, you know.
They couldn't stop it though, because in them days it wasn't illegal. It wasn't illegal to do it. People were just going crazy. It was like, was it Woodstock with all the hippies and all that years ago, and all the free love and stuff like that. It was like, it must have been like that being recreated again. People were just buzzing. They were just buzzing. I've never seen something grow so fast myself.
We really just treated it like it was a one-off. Like it weren't going to happen again. This was like, you know, the cops are going to come down on us, let's have it. So it was just one of them, really. We didn't know what we were doing. We were just having the rave up, you know what I mean? And I don't know, it's that feeling of it being illegal and actually doing something wrong that actually give you the buzz. It definitely did. And the more that we, you know, every hour that we were raving was like one up for us.
Going on here, everyone's dancing like, you know, like, and I was like, what's going on here, like, you know, like, and it was like, you know, it was wicked, like, so that's how I first came into like the scene.
The Amnesia lot, they were like the guys around town, and we'd go out in town and that. Didn't really know them then, but they were the boys really. When they started doing the parties, they'd come into town where we were going out, and they'd let us know, you know, what was going on and what they were doing. So we thought, all right, we'll have a look at this, because these clubs ain't really for us. They're a bit too restricting, they're a bit too cheesy, too, you know, run of the mill. And then these guys come along with a new concept, basically, because it had never really been done, not that I knew of, about raving in warehouses and that. So we were like, okay, we'll go down and have a look. We went and had a look, and it just seemed to fit. It was just right at the right time.
I think when ecstasy arrived, that was a game changer. Because a lot of the guys that were attacking our sound systems, you know, a lot of the guys that we were fighting with in town, we were rubbing shoulders with those guys. I was playing music to some of those guys that we were fighting 2 or 3 weeks before. When drugs actually came into the house culture, that was a game changer. A lot of people got on it in the moment, and it was the only sort of time where people would be together and get on. She had people like from Canley, you had guys from Bower Green, you had guys from Henley Green, all under one roof. That would never have happened normally because you would be fighting each other. But that was a time where things changed.
Come to think of it, the day we were organising the do, getting all like sort of light soft drinks in, stuff like that, up on the top of the building opposite was the police with a zooming, well, at that time with camera. And we were thinking, you know, they're going to raid the event, stuff like that. But luckily, no, that didn't happen. We had the event went off, charged a £5 to get in. And we just all went in there and it all, you know, no one wanted it to end. It was one of them nights where, I think in the end at 8 in the morning, that was it. After that 8 in the morning, I'll never forget, we went then to Thomas King House in Hill Fields, took the sound system, a generator, and off we went up to the empty flats in the top of Hill Fields. You couldn't get up and down the stairs in the flats.
We did the Canal Road illegal rave, which was the first Amnesia party. And then from there, we went from over the road to Reflections. We got ourselves a residency there, which was like, you know, just heaven.
We just done that one event. That was the first like all-night event. And like I said, we used to be doorman at the Tally-O at this time as well. So that sort of got a late entertainment's licence. We started doing a lot of stuff there and thinking, God, this thing's growing. But we sort of done it kept it within there. And then Kieran says, why don't we do another one? And I was like, yeah, it'd be a good idea. There's a lot more people into it now. We went and seen this old barn, what was just derelict. We didn't know who owned it or anything like that. It was just a derelict barn. So anyway, we ended up going to this barn. We had a little mooch around it and that, and we thought, yeah, this is ideal. So we spoke to the man with the sound system again. We had Jeff with the decks and all that. Another little flyer. But we learnt that if you could write one flyer out, you could print them 6 at a time, not one at a time. Cut them all down. We ended up doing this one at this barn, but it come through a little. It's a nice estate. It was in Binley somewhere. That was it. That's where we done House 1 then. We didn't sort of count the first one, Canal Road, as a rave. It was just a little get together. But this one was like a proper party sort of thing. Do you know? We're getting a bit more organised here and that.
When this whole dance music thing happened, you can't sugarcoat it, the drugs are there. But the ecstasy thing that came with the dance music just stopped everybody fighting. And everyone became friends, and everybody, it was almost like their eyes were open to the bigger picture. And this is kind of weird because this is when the government got frightened and they started shutting down these parties left, right and centre. There was no trouble at any of these parties. Everyone was too happy. The trouble had stopped. The football violence had stopped. The racism bashing and the homophobic bashing, all this stuff had stopped, and everybody was in just one room having a great time. It was funny because it said all these faces, you know, from the different areas who were once fighting each other, they'll become friends and we're getting on. And it was all the common theme about the music and just these parties. Now, if you think about it, that's an ideal solution. There was no trouble at turnout times. Everyone was coming out in the morning and going home. Whereas previous to that, if you're out in town on a Friday night or Saturday night, you'd have fights between the different areas, the different rivals, the rival areas. People would be like fighting each other left, right and centre at kicking out time. It was rife. But then this illegal parties happened, the dance music thing happened, and there was peace. Now, why wouldn't you want that as an establishment, as a government, as a police? Instead, they tried to turn it into an activity that was warping the mind of the youth, the nation's youth.
We're gonna take you where no one has taken you before. Open your mind. Yeah. Feel the force. Summertime buses. I want to hear you stomping. Yeah. Let's go. Doc Scott, Midlands Hardcore Mixmaster. go. Yeah. We come to rock ya. Rise up. I'm DJ House.
Illegal Fight for the Right to Dance. Edited by Cameron Ward. Sound interviews, Edward Taylor. Assistants, Phil Evans, Katie Dowling, Roman Dowling. Written, directed and produced by Adrian Dowling. Presented by Man Paris. Good night and good bless. This is a Daylight Robbery production, 2020 AD.